Workplace daily live stream. This is where we each day talk about work, workplace, and employee experience. We discuss the key topics that everyone's going to be talking about today. I am Steve Todd. I'm the founder of Open Source Workplace, and I'm here with my good friend and host of the Workplace Innovator podcast, Mike Petresky. Mike, how you doing, man? Good morning.
Hey, well done, Steve. One of your best intros ever.
Wow,
I'm doing
thank
great.
you so much. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words.
You're getting good at this after what? I don't know, 60 or 70 or 80 of these things. Have we lost track?
I think we've lost
We don't
track.
number them, do we? Just date them. It just time goes by. 4 or 5 months. How are you? You need a break, don't you? You need a break.
What do you mean? I'm sitting on
vacation.
I'm sitting on my beach, man. What are you talking about? I've got the.
It looks
perfect
beautiful.
break.
It looks like a really nice place.
It is, man. It is.
But for real, you need a break. You know why I can tell you need a break?
Why is that?
Because you crammed so many articles into today's show. You're running out of time. You got all these things you need to talk about. You got all these ideas you want to share. And I woke up to this list of things we're going to talk about today.
Well,
your newsletter's out. Everybody, get your newsletter at OSW Daily.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And yeah,
I appreciate.
And we're ready to talk.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your kind words, man. And I like to, repeat myself, as you know. It takes up the time, especially when I cram so much in. And to be fair to you, Mike, though, when I send all that out, yes, there's a lot of information in the newsletter, way over and above what we talk about here on the show. So if you do want to sign up for it, do please click the link below, sign up. You get a almost daily newsletter. And I say almost daily, I basically marry it with what we do here on the live stream. And in there we share workplace productivity tips, workplace security tips, statistics, employee engagement statistics, a lot of information that if you're interested in workplace, and employee experience, these are things that you can use to tell your story, present within your internal organization, and then use that as benchmarks against what you want to do. So I do provide a lot more information. But what are we going to talk about today, Mike? You set it up where we're going to talk about a lot.
Stuff.
So here we go. So work from home. Apparently, the shift did shock companies. But anyway, there are lessons, and we're going to talk about those lessons. And we're going to talk about the UK office demand shifting to the suburbs. Workplace satisfaction. Apparently, it's quite simple, Mike. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about what is the most popular passwords. And this may or may not shock people. But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. So
that's one of my favorites.
Let's dig right in. It is. I love it too. I love it too. So, Wall Street Journal article. Lessons learned from working from home. And Mike, obviously you sent this through to me, and I'm just going to, one line that just sort of popped to me was the study of the amount of people who wanted to work from home in May declining by July. So it went from 70% down to 53%. And this is significantly higher than 2016 of 43%. It's a 10% increase, but I figured it would have been higher than that. And then just to put this into context from the article, this is not talking about 53% of people who want to work from home full time. This is people who want to either work from home full time as an element, but then also people who maybe want to do that hybrid where you work from home a couple of days a week and in the office for the balance of the time. But that's sort of what astounded me, and I'd just love to hear your thoughts on what you thought when you read that.
Well, is it want to work from home, Steve, or is it are working from home, or going back to the office?
It is want to, because I suspect there's more than 53% of people who are currently working from home. But yeah, did you remember different?
Yeah. Well, I again, it was a long article, and I maybe didn't pick up all the details, but that's a key factor. And anytime you read these surveys with all the percentages, I always have to kind of double take and say, are they talking about knowledge workers, the entire workforce? They're talking about here the entire employment base. So when they talk about 53% of employees now still working from home at least part of the time, it was at a high of 70% at the peak of the pandemic. March, April, I guess it was. And then it started, people started returning to offices in May and June. And here we are, these stats, this survey from July. So again, it's a survey. It's data that is sometimes depends on how it's framed, how it's, put together, what the questions actually do say, and so forth. But I was getting the sense, at least, that there is, and the article was telling us, there's a huge shift here. There's a number of people In fact, they used the term, if it wasn't this article, it was another article I read, this is similar to the Industrial Revolution, where people were moving into factories at the turn of the last century, 100 plus years ago. This is now remaking the workforce, remaking the workplace environment, and obviously work from home is going to be a huge part of this. And my takeaway from the article was there are things that now workplace leaders need to be doing, not just here in the near term, managing these swings in who's going to be in the office, who's coming back, who's not, who's working from home, but just dramatic shifts in how we deal with people working from home in the long term. And there are a number of ideas. You saw it on the slide there, folks. There's a number of things to do with technology, and there are startup companies coming out with new tools and new ways to create those collaborative environments, which you and I have talked about are necessary because we are in this for the long run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you do mention the sort of technology tools. It's interesting and fascinating, actually, how many of these startups are actually being accelerated in coming to market with products. So VC firms are getting behind them, applying money into their products and their solutions that they're doing. And, little things from, add-ons you can put onto your Zoom, where basically it's just chatbots, but, or not chatbots, but, people who are working remotely, chat tools, apps. And obviously it talks about Zoom and how it's creating this work from home teleconferencing system you can purchase, which includes your mic, your camera, and also a little dashboard or video screen that you can utilize.
Yeah.
So you don't have to utilize your work computer, which was interesting. And there's a whole bunch more, but in essence, it just finished with the opportunities to innovate and rethink. And the nature of work has never been so prominent, right? This is going to be generations where they're going to change, and we have a real opportunity right now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
It's a fundamental shift, I think, is the big, numbers aside, percentages aside. There's a fundamental change that has been thrust upon us due to this pandemic situation, and great capitalist society and system. People are going to find ways to monetize it and come up with new solutions and technology tools to meet the needs of the market. And that's what this article kind of jumped out to me. It was saying these things are happening. And, details aside, we can all speculate which ones are going to be here for the long run. We don't know. But at the same time, there are a lot of bright folks out there trying to, take advantage of this opportunity, as you say, to infuse new technology and new tools to make our new reality a more productive one and a more engaging one. So it's interesting.
No, it absolutely is. And, when we talk about, okay, what is that workplace going to be in the future? There was another article that popped up in The Guardian where it talks about UK office demand and how it's shifting to not just suburbs of big cities, but actually secondary cities and third cities within countries. So this was a article that was written by The Guardian, as I mentioned, all on IWG. Obviously, people know IWG. They have multiple brands, one of which is Regis Spaces, for example. And some of the things that they've seen, the trends that they've actually seen, and not only just in how people are utilizing flexible space, but where they're going to use flexible space, but also that people want to rent, hire, different products that they can take home and actually work and actually use their own flexible space within their home, which I find very, very interesting. And it did clarify. Sorry, you going to say something, Mike?
No, that's right. Taking a breath.
Okay. Take a breath, man. Take a breath. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. But
I always have things to say, but you go ahead.
I know you do. But the other big thing is it mentions that this shift was happening prior to COVID, but COVID did accelerate. And we're finding that across many things. We just talked about the technology things just 2 seconds ago. So this hub and spoke that people want to create. So in other words, you may have a smaller, be it headquarter, be it hub office within a big city, but then you have satellite offices all around or in close proximity or maybe cities away that allows employees to commute back and forth within an environment that is sort of approved and managed by a organization, but then allows people to actually come to an office, which I think is a great solution.
Yeah, and you've talked about this before. It's something that you brought up early on. You were the first one to bring the idea to my mind because it was already happening. It was something that was being used by large organizations. But the takeaway from this Guardian article for me was, again, nobody's in a rush to get back on public transportation, and no one is in a rush to commute again, at least in the near term, while we're still in the throes of COVID-19, to get back into these, little public spaces in small confined spaces like a subway train.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the shift is being driven largely by that. We see the value in bringing people together, bringing people into an office. We've talked about it here. I think that's real, and there's absolute, evidence of that. But how do you convince them to get from home into that office where they can be with their colleagues and do all those wonderful things? We talk about ideation and creativity and innovation and collaboration. Well, this hub and spoke model may be a solution for that, at least in the near term. And maybe, again, part of that remaking of the way we think about real estate and think about workplace is it's another thing that's being tried and being accelerated. And we'll see how long it lasts and what the long-term implications are. But I'm glad to see that we're trying to be creative about getting people back together safely. In fact, I've heard some stories anecdotally just about friends whose offices are completely closed, or the fact that, IFMA, my local chapter does not get together in person anymore. We do online virtual meetings, but there are groups of people gathering, at an outdoor setting, maybe an outdoor restaurant, or grabbing a cup of coffee and going to a park or someplace where they can social distance, feel safe and comfortable. And they're being rewarded for that, getting those opportunities to get together. And what we do in our personal lives with our professional organizations, like IFMA, and also at the workplace, it's going to be something we have to, figure out.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting you mentioned that, because actually whenever you mentioned that, my brain went to something I heard yesterday about micro schools. And I wonder, is that something that could be adopted for things that we do within the workplace? Like, to your point, right? So when we have this good weather and are we able to sort of provide an ability for employees to come together in a social environment away from the office, in parks? I mean, you take those folks who are, New York City, San Francisco, big cities where perhaps they feel more comfortable, where they don't have to get on public transport, but they can actually, go grab a coffee, meet each up in the park, whatever that is. And the reason why I mention it is because there's this thing running through from micro schools where, parents are deciding to actually homeschool. They're not going to send their kids to school. They will still attend online classes that their school are providing, but then a group of parents will actually hire a out of work school teacher to actually come and actually educate a group, or a small group, 5, 6, 7 kids, to actually augment what they're actually learning. So basically, people get that in action, or in person teaching, but also they get some sort of social collaboration with other kids. And I'm hearing that more and more. So I think it's good in multiple ways. One, that kids are getting the exposure and the social interaction. Out of work teachers are going to be employed for a period of time, and obviously we think about the north of the country in the US. Well, that's fine for these couple of months. As we get into winter, that's a little more challenging. But perhaps in states, California, Florida, Texas, perhaps that's something that could be done almost year round. But I think it's an interesting model that's been discussed.
Well, that's great. I hadn't heard about that, and it just proves that we're creative folks. People are finding ways to do things, and as human beings, we need to be adaptable and find ways to use our skills. Whether you're a teacher or a workplace leader, you have to find ways to recreate these settings to make us, continue to be productive during our pandemic life, which is something we're in for the long haul. I keep saying in the last several weeks, that's been my theme is let's stop just kind of being on pause and waiting for something to return to an old normal that is gone forever. Let's absolutely dive headfirst and 100% into coming up with new creative ways. Some will work, some won't. We'll try and find the things that work for us and work around weather and other issues we have to deal with, but that's what I want to do. I want to be moving forward.
Yeah. No, I mean, just you mentioned something there. I just thought I'd throw out a question just come to my mind. Are you seeing, in all the people you talk to, a change in more favorability towards going to the office than we may have done, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months ago? Or do you think it's still the same?
It's an interesting question, Steve, and I'm going to ask on my live stream today potentially a survey question that I've had there for the last several weeks, and I'll ask it to you. And I think I've asked this to you, but I stole it from another show. But the idea of, has your attitude about COVID-19 changed? And the way to strip it down and be most simple about it, compared to 1 month ago, let's just put a timestamp on it. Month ago compared to today, are you more concerned, less concerned, or the same amount of concern about COVID? As far as the answer to your question, I don't mean to dodge it. It's just that my little bubble, my little group that I have these conversations with, it seems to be pretty consistent that either offices have decided to, be very conservative and stay shuttered, and people are being, functioning well at home. So therefore, they're targeting 2021 as the reopening sometime. And there's others that have been reopened the whole time, or that have been open the whole time at some limited capacity. And a lot of my local community here in the DC area is obviously government workers, and there's been a different mix there, but mostly it's people on either a staggered schedule, week on, week off, or they've just been working this whole time because they have to. They're essential workers, military, government, it's high security. They have to go into offices to do their job. So I haven't really continued to ask those questions and see any difference, but I'll ask it back to you. And if you've got any data, whether personal, just anecdotal, and how do you feel? Are you less concerned about COVID or the same or more?
I'm giggling because I love it when you ask somebody a question, all of a sudden they turn around on you. I love it, but I totally get it.
That's my job.
I know. I totally get it. I totally get it. My concern about going to the office, I think, remains the same. My desire to get back to the office has probably increased. I think that's how I would phrase it, where I probably miss the team more and want to be integrated with the team more than I maybe did before. And that's not to say that where I was before was a low. It wasn't. I mean, that's the first thing. I think ever since we started it, we've been talking about, who do we miss? What do we miss? We miss the interaction with our team. But I think, I am probably the same on concerns because of, I don't know if I can trust the people who are going to be on the train, the subway, and all the transportation and everything getting from my home to the office. Do I think the office environment would be safe? Yes. Do I think it would be vibrant and collaborative? Today, probably not, but that's not to say I wouldn't like to go in at least one time, 2 times, whatever it is over a period of time to actually see colleagues. But I just have to be careful for my own health. But one thing I did want to sort of pull on that you mentioned was about, in the DC area specifically, about, government workers. I saw a statistic this morning. I'm not too sure if you're aware. The number staggered me. 1.5 million government workers are currently unemployed or furloughed. Now, whenever you consider the unemployment before COVID was like 5.5 million for the entire country, that's crazy. That shocked me. I don't know if you've seen that statistic.
No, I hadn't seen that, and that surprises me because if anything, the government, and I guess how do they define
state? Government and state. So
okay, state. All right, I could see a big chunk of that is state employees who are not as secure because the federal government, if anybody, is just keeping everybody on the payroll because that's, in a sense, a stimulus package in and of itself. You keep those government employees employed, it helps the government. And the government is obviously pouring trillions of dollars into the economy through unemployment benefits and through other relief packages to try to maintain the private sector as well. So that does surprise me. But if state governments, I know that the trickle down is not necessarily getting to state governments, and state governments are their budgets are being crushed by the lack of tax revenue and by the lack of activity going on in the economy, and they are absolutely dependent on that to fund their workforce. So that doesn't surprise me if it's an all-inclusive number there.
Yeah.
But it's funny when you talk about how you've changed, your desire to get back to your office, yet your level of concern is the same. It's going to be interesting to watch as that level of concern is here. Desire to get back was here at the beginning, but it's going up. Maybe this hasn't changed, but this is going up. Is there a point where your level of concern drops enough to where you're then comfortable making that move back to the office? And is it purely going to continue to be your choice? And I don't want to personalize it too
Yeah.
much, but is it going to be our choice as employees, as workers, or does it get to the point, and I've heard these anecdotal stories, I'm sure you have too, is where it's like, we need you back, it's time to come back, the office is open. And we kind of wondered about this early on. It's like, what happens when those two scales don't match up? You know, the employer says it's time to come back, the office is open, but the employee says, I'm still not comfortable, I'm not there yet. What happens then? And these are some of the challenges we'll be facing.
I 100% agree with you. And, to answer the question is, when do I think I'll be comfortable? I don't know, is my honest answer. I'm sure no matter what I say, there will be an emotional switch in me that just happens for whatever reason. I don't know what that reason is just now, but I suspect at some point that will switch in me, and I will then decide, okay, no, I'm happy to go in. But do I think I'll go in, every day of the week whenever that happens? No, I don't. And I've sort of been thinking this through. I'm working on a project, Future of Work, and I've been thinking about, okay, so looking at different people in the organization, just mentally, not asking questions, but how would they work? How does them being in the office or not being in the office impact, the team that they operate in, the product that they're involved with, and all these different attributes. And it's something I just don't know when I'll be ready, but I definitely don't think I'll be good in 5 days a week. And I wasn't before anyway, so
You weren't.
no,
Yeah.
no. So I'm
And
probably
this human side, this piece of the psychological puzzle is
yeah,
a perfect lead into the next two articles,
yeah,
which you took a deep dive into this idea of neuroscience and understanding how people think, and just share with us
yeah.
real quick, because I know we're running out of time, but it's crazy how the conversation has led to this uh,
Naturally, right?
place,
Yeah,
because here it is. Naturally, this is an area where all of a sudden workplace leaders need to become, neuroscientists and understand psychology and human behavior more than ever.
right. And this is an old article actually. So this was an article that was sent to us, Mike, to be shared, and I read it, and I was just like, this is so applicable. This is written a while ago, but in essence, if we were able to take these benchmarks, or these words, right, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, and looked at those as attributes that employees wanted to be measured by, or not, you know, these are the emotions that they feel, and perhaps if we use these as measurements, we could better predict or be able to tell what their satisfaction levels are within the organization. So what is it? It's obviously it's all stated there, but autonomy, I think, is probably the number one thing I think that a lot of people strive for. Fairness is also an emotion that people want to feel like, what they're doing is they're being rewarded, and they think it's fair, they're getting acknowledged, all those different attributes. And if we're able to take what and identify which individual actually fits within these different things, because we all will have different opinions on which one matters most to us. There are those that are driven just purely by status, right? So they want to be the
Mm-hmm.
person who's head of the team. They want to be the person who is, out in front of everyone and being sung about. There are those that couldn't care less, right? I don't care whether I get all the public praise. I don't care. I don't want it. There's just so actually understanding that different personalities will allow a manager to actually um, manage, if that's the right word, is to manage expectations to increase their satisfaction. So somebody may want
Sure.
autonomy, may not want the status, and so on and so forth. So and what's really interesting with the statistic within it, there 70% of the variance in employee engagement depends on how people are being managed. So that just so takes back just those few things that I just said and ties it right back to what the article just said, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Not much more to add other than people want to be valued.
Yep.
People want to feel valued. They want to know that their role and what they do for the organization is important, and that drives a lot of our feeling of engagement and connectivity to the mission of the organization, especially.
No, it does, and it's important to sort of really understand, okay, within your team, who fits in what spectrum.
Yep.
Now, to
Yep.
wrap
We're
things
all
up,
different.
we're gonna come to something a little lighter, um, and this was an article that came across about passwords, and I was astounded by how many people have these really simple passwords. Um, the most popular one being 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8.
Yeah, right, right.
And
There it
it's just
is.
like, so whatever you think you're being clever in doing those ones, it's just not. We're just not. Um, what I also find staggering was just 12% of passwords feature special characters. I don't know about you, Mike, how you
Yeah.
sort of create your passwords, but
Well, I'm not going to tell you, Steve.
well,
I'm
no,
not
no,
telling you. I don't want anybody to crack into my accounts. But no, I do.
is it?
I will.
It's DJ
My
Mike P123, isn't it? That's what it is, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, when I saw the 1 2 3 4 5, it's like that's exactly straight out of an episode of The Office where Michael
Right,
Scott,
right.
has the IT guy has to come to, install some software because he can't figure it out himself. He's like, yeah, I get to this part where it says enter your password. I don't know what to do. He goes, well, that's where you enter your password. He goes, oh. He goes, you know what your password is? He goes, and he pulls a sticky note off his screen that says 1 2 3 4. And the IT guy's like,
I know, I know.
so classic. But no, I will not give away anything other than I try to mix it up. I've been given these tips, and the article kind of emphasized the fact that you need to have, different passwords for different devices. It does become a
It's
a strain on your
oh my
your
goodness.
brain,
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
I've begun to keep a sheet. I won't tell you where it is, but there's a way for me to keep track of these things, and even that's not up to date. So
Yeah.
there may be some Star Wars characters' names. There may be some numbers and some symbols in my passwords, but that's the only clue I'm going to give you, folks. You got to figure it out from there.
Fair enough. And
If it's Jar Jar Binks 1 2 3 4 5. I'm just kidding.
I've no
You know
idea.
Jar Jar Binks,
No,
Steve?
I don't.
No
No.
idea who that is?
No.
All my Star Wars friends out there, let us know that you know who that is, please. It's a classic Star Wars
that
character,
is-
loved or hated by
Okay.
most.
Okay. I have to take your word for it. And people are probably going, "Who is this guy?" You know what I mean? Doesn't
How
know
about
who
Mickey
this is.
Mouse 1 2 3 4 5?
I know.
I'm
who
going to go with
Mickey
Mickey Mouse.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough. But yeah. So it's this really interesting look, and obviously why is this important and what we're talking about? With people, so many people working from home. People have access to personal devices when they're working on work things, and therefore, we have to be extra vigilant on passwords, how we're using passwords, and NASDAQ, obviously, as you can imagine, we get very strict protocols in how we create passwords, and we get training
Sure.
on how to do this, and we got to change our passwords for multiple things regularly. So therefore, to your point, keeping up with them, remembering them, which is this, which one password for this, one password for that, one password for this, and it just you have to be creative, and also create a way that allows you to remember each of them as well. So that's
Absolutely.
So that's where we're at. So Mike, any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I thought there were more articles we were going to talk
Oh,
about, but maybe
no,
you
I
just
had
shared
to-
them
no,
with
I
me
had to-
for
yeah. No, they were
for my
they,
benefit.
They were linked, and they are in the links below. So they were for
Good, yeah.
benefit. Yeah, because one of them was a PDF of like 25 pages all around the psychology of work.
Right. That's
and
what I mentioned,
COVID
the deep
related.
dive.
Yeah, no. I wasn't going to take us through that. So that was more
Okay,
just.
but there's
to,
great resources
yeah,
available, and getting into that psychology. If you're into that topic like I am, I mean, I spent way too much time reading those articles you sent, Steve, and the fascinating stuff about how we're wired and how we need to, keep in tune with our, fight or flight instincts and fear, and I'm fascinated by all that, and there are ways by recognizing those human traits and applying it to this situation we're living through, we can be better at leadership and at helping others. So that's something that I think is very useful.
Yeah. And something just popped in my head, and it's an observation that I've had recently. It's not recently, but over the last couple of years. I don't know whether you feel the same, but do you think as we get older, our fight or flight responses increase? They get elevated. In other words, I don't know whether it's because we're younger, we feel more invincible or less scared or whatever it is. As we get older, we feel a little more vulnerable. Do you find your fight or flight instincts are a little more sensitive?
I'd have to think about that. I don't know
Yeah.
if I have noticed a change like that. I think I've always had, if anything, I think it's maybe the opposite for me because I'm more self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of operating purely on instinct, the older I get, the more I recognize those anxieties that come forth from, instinctive kind of reactions to situations.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing unique about humans is we can project into the future and be afraid of things that aren't actually happening to us. So we can imagine, by worrying about what ifs, we have this cognitive ability to basically put ourselves into a situation that our body reacts to like a danger, as if there's a bear attacking us, but it's really this idea that is attacking us, this uncertainty that is attacking us. And that's something I've learned to manage better, because I've had to. I think many of us have to deal with those, and I'm not perfect at it. Don't get me wrong, folks. Always a work in progress. But I think if anything, because of experience and understanding that, hey, put that into context. It's not a real, that emotion you're feeling is not based on some real danger. It's more of a projection of some future danger. It's helped me then kind of learn techniques to control it. But it's certainly there. No doubt. It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
How about you? Are you feeling it? You're feeling it more? Is there a mouse across the floor there? You're going to jump?
And I don't know whether it's because just me spending more time with you, or I don't know what it is, but
I see where you're going with that. There it is.
No. That's not where I was going to go. That's not where
leave the situation.
I'm going to the beach. All right, folks. If you
that's
listen,
why you're going.
If you listened all the way through, thank you so much. And as always, if you email OSW Daily and say you watched all the way through, there will be a prize for you. And
excellent.
I appreciate you watching all the way through. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe. And Mike, thank you. Have a wonderful day. Have a great live stream. And we'll chat tomorrow.